Life Audio.
Christian Parent Crazy World with Catherine Segars is brought to you by Life Audio and is part of our Faith Toolkit series. For more inspirational faith-affirming podcasts, visit lifeaudio.com.
Welcome to Christian Parent Crazy World, the podcast that tackles tough topics to help you be a godly parent in an ungodly world. I am your host, Catherine Segars, and in today's episode, we will tackle this huge question: how do we protect our kids from pornography? Specifically, how do we porn-proof our kids' minds? Because that is where we need to start, moms and dads. My guest today, Kristen Jensen, is on a mission to help parents prepare their kids for that moment when they encounter pornography, so they will know what it is and exactly what to do. And hey, if that horse is out the barn in your house, Kristen has a lot of wisdom on this topic that will help you help your child. That's the ground we will cover in this episode of Christian Parent Crazy World. So let's get started. I am so excited for you to meet my incredible guest today. Kristen Jensen is the #1 best-selling author of the Good Pictures, Bad Pictures series of read-aloud books, which have been translated into 10 languages, by the way. These books are amazing. She is also the founder of Defend Young Minds and the executive producer of the Brain Defense Digital Safety Curriculum, which are some incredible resources designed to help parents and kids protect young minds from the dangers of pornography. You're going to learn more about that in our conversation. One last thing, and this is so awesome. Kristen has kindly offered to give a set of her books to one of my listeners. How cool is that? So to find out how to be entered for this giveaway, stick around until the end of the show, and I'll give you all the details. With that said, let's jump right in. Kristen, I'm so excited to have you here on Christian Parent Crazy World. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Catherine. It's great to be here with you.
I wanted to let you know, I get pitched a lot of books and authors to come on this show. And I don't know that I have ever been more enthusiastic about a book or a curriculum for kids than I am about your book on how to prepare kids for when they encounter pornography. Because in today's day, it's not an if, it's a when. So I give you 2 really huge enthusiastic thumbs up from me and my kids. We were talking a little before the show. I was shocked. You know, I knew that I wanted to share these books with my kids. I had no idea how excited they would be to read them with me. Your second book, you've got one, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior, which is for younger kids. You can read that in one sitting. But the older book has 9 short chapters in it, and they were begging every day to read the book. And then we finished it, and they're like, can we do it again? And I'm like, sure. How is that? I know you were saying you get that a lot, don't you?
Yes, I was surprised. I knew parents would appreciate it. I did not know kids would love it so much. And I think, and I've thought about this quite a bit, and I think it's because kids love to learn about their brain and learn and to be empowered. And this treats kids with a lot of respect, gives them information that they need to have to protect their brain, not only from pornography and pornography addiction, but from all addictions, really.
Yes.
And in this world, which is just filled with addictive behaviors, addictive substances, I think kids deserve to know how to protect their brain from any and all addictions. It's just that pornography happens to be the thing that kids have most access to when they're young, unfortunately. So, yeah, so I'm so glad that your kids loved Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. That's awesome.
They did. They really, really did. Now, we're going to get into that, the way you describe addiction. Let me just say, as an adult, I don't think I've understood it so clearly as I do now. Because, I mean, we all have like little addictions. Maybe I love chocolate or cheesy made for TV rom-coms occasionally or whatever. But, we all have people in our lives that may struggle with a more serious kind of an addiction, be that to a substance or to pornography or a sexual addiction or whatever it could be. And understanding it, you put the cookies on the bottom shelf that frankly, I needed it described that way. So we're going to get into that. I'm really enthusiastic about that. But as an author myself and having written book proposals before, I know that one thing you have to do is explain what need does this fill? What place does it fill on the bookshelf that isn't currently being met? And your book does that brilliantly because this is such a tough topic. How do we as parents begin to speak to our kids about such a sensitive issue like pornography? We, most of us feel tongue-tied, embarrassed, or reticent to broach the topic. You have done that for us. All we have to do is sit down and read it to our kids. And I can honestly say I sleep a lot better. I wish this had been around 10 years ago, but I sleep a lot better now knowing that my younger kids, my 9 and my 7-year-old, and I might have my older kids read it too, because I think your explanation of addiction is so brilliant. But why don't we start by talking about why you wanted to write a book for young kids about pornography?
Yeah, this was not one of my goals.
It wasn't?
No.
Wasn't on the bucket list.
No. I moved to a different town and met a woman. And she had a large family. She homeschooled. She was really trying to protect her kids from all kinds of, dangers. But, the internet was coming into their home and their older son got into pornography. And that and some other experiences led him to act out on his own brothers and sisters. So the 14-year-old down to the 4-year-old.
Wow.
And when I heard this story, she called me up one night. We spoke till like 1:30 in the morning. I went to bed. I woke up the next morning and I just felt compelled to look for a resource, a book. Because I have this idea that there's a book for everything, Yeah. I thought, there's going to be a book on Amazon. I'll just go and find it and I'll give it to her. And I couldn't find anything. And I'm like, come on. This is a problem. We know kids are getting into this.
Yeah.
I cannot believe there is not a book out there. So I just had this crazy idea that I should write it. And so I started writing it. That was back in 2011. It did come out in 2014. So we're celebrating our 10th anniversary, actually.
I wish I'd known, man.
It's been growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
So, but I've had many adults come to me and say, I wish my mother had this book when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I always know what he's going to say, or she's going to say, I have this problem and it's just been such a hard thing throughout my life. So, so I wrote Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. I had a lot of help. Like, it's not just this brain. It's a lot of brains. I tested it out numerous times, numerous iterations with parents. And then I published it, and we have revised it and kept it up to date every print run. And then we also have a guide you can get, which gives all the science behind it, because all based on science, social science, neuroscience, and endorsed by, pediatricians, doctors, therapists. You were mentioning that you might have your older kids read it. It is for kids like 7 to 11, right? You're not going to probably sit your 18-year-old on your lap and read it. But I have therapists telling me that they use this book for their clients because, like you said, it's such a simple explanation of the process of addiction, and, the problems with it and how you can overcome it. And, so each of the books give a definition, a warning, and a plan. And so those are 3 things that every kid deserves to have so that they can have a defense against pornography, and they know what to do when they see it. And, when, I don't know about you, but Catherine, when I'm caught off guard, I'm terrible. Like, And kids are no better. Like when they're caught off guard by pornography, they don't know what it is. They don't know how to talk about it. They don't know who they could talk about it with. They don't know what to feel about it. They're just totally prepared.
They feel shame, so they hide.
Yes. So they hide it.
And you explain all of that so beautifully in the book. That's what I love. Because too often we're kind of coming at as parents from the outside. Okay, what parental controls can I put in place? How can I monitor all the technology? How can I try to keep this stuff from getting into my kid's brain? Which it's going to be introduced to them at some point. Okay, I'm Gen X. I was probably in 6th grade when I was introduced to erotic pornography in a book form. Another kid brought it to school. So this was back in the 80s, okay? And, and then, of course, other forms later. Thankfully, I've not had a problem with that. But this is back in the 80s. So our kids are going to get introduced to it. What your book does so beautifully and brilliantly, I think, is that you start the protection in the mind of the kid to enable them, to empower them on what they need to do when they encounter it. You've given them steps and a plan, but let's talk about the basic message of your book. How do we even begin this conversation with our kids?
Yeah, I know it seems so tricky, right? Because we have a hard enough time talking about sex.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I really do encourage parents to talk about that, about sex earlier, because what you want to do is you want to say, okay, this is what sex is, this is what the birds and the bees, whatever, where babies come from. And this is the toxic counterfeit to it.
Yeah.
And it's called pornography, right? So you want to, that's the whole good pictures, bad pictures. You want to present the good and the bad so they can see a clear choice between them. We just take a comfortable approach in the book where a mother is talking to her son. And I mentioned to you before that I'm writing a book now just for girls, but you can read this book to girls or boys, but she starts this conversation. So I'm modeling a proactive parent that begins the conversation, begins with a definition. Here are good pictures. We love the good pictures. They remind us of all the wonderful times we've had with family and friends. But there are bad pictures too, and they're called pornography, and this is what it is. And, we go into a definition, a simple definition. You don't need a ton of nuance. First of all, 7, 8, 9 years, they're not going to get it. They're not going to get the nuance. Their brain isn't ready for nuance.
Right.
You could definitely start nuance with an 11, 12-year-old, but, and on. And so we start that, but we also talk about how pornography can make you feel.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel like the pull of a giant magnet, but here's some dangers. And we mostly talk about addiction because I felt like that was like the concrete thing that a kid could kind of wrap their mind around better than some of the other things, which is like objectification, and we touch lightly on those. We touch lightly on how pornography teaches people to be mean to each other, so violent, and other things like that. But that's just very lightly touched on. But that's something that you could expand on, obviously. But mostly then we go into, what is an addiction? How is this developed? How does pornography become an addiction? And then giving them reasons to reject it, right? So you want to have warnings. You want to teach them why it's harmful for their brain. And as they get older, there are physical ramifications of using porn. There's sexual dysfunction that can, I wish every 14 or 15-year-old boy especially knew how sexual dysfunction can result from a porn addiction. But so you give them reasons. I mean, it's good to teach them what it is, but they need to have some solid reasons to reject it because it's very alluring to kids in many ways. They're very curious.
Right.
And then you give them a plan, what to do, exactly what to do when they see it. So they've got a definition, a warning or mini warnings, right? And a plan that, now they're prepared to do what you've, asked them to do. And, like I said, kids that are caught off guard. And I talked to one mom who said that her 2 girls were over playing at a friend's house. She drove up to pick them up, and she noticed that the little girl they were playing with had a phone. and she was showing them something on the phone. And when the little girls jumped in the car, the mom like, what was she showing you on the phone? This is before she had even thought about talking to them about pornography. And they looked at each other, and this is back when My Little Pony was, big. And she's like, it was a My Little Pony video. So they lied. They lied.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know. They didn't have the vocabulary. And then when she read Good Pictures, Bad Pictures to them, they fessed up and they said, Mom, that wasn't a My Little Pony video. That was pornography that we saw. And so then she was able to work with them and talk to them about it and kind of debrief them. And then, when we open the conversation with these kids, the shame level, that's how we overcome shame.
Right.
Is we tackle it. We
bring it into the light.
Yes, because in the dark, it has power.
Right.
But when you shine the light on it, then our kids have power, right?
And what you also go into the book that we would share with our kids is that this isn't your fault. You're not in trouble. Mommy and daddy are not going to be angry. We want you to tell us so that we can help protect you. And also, like you said, having gone into the idea, of course, this seems enticing. We walk around with parts of our body covered all the time. It's natural for a kid to be curious what's under there, right? And pornography exposes that in a very unrealistic and unhealthy way. So it's natural for them to be intrigued and enticed by that. But if we give them, and I love that example that you gave, because they immediately felt shame. They immediately hid exactly what Adam and Eve did in the garden, but when she read the book to them, they were able to fess up, realizing, okay, I'm not in trouble. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't ask to see this image. It has been imposed upon me. And the right thing to do in this situation is to not feel the shame, but to walk into the light, bring it, expose it, and allow an adult to protect us from that. And one of the things we realize too, that we become the expert on this for our children as we introduce the topic to them. We become the one source that they can come to find the relief that they need, the healing that they need from that, the solutions that they need to help rid their mind of those images. Yes. And to protect them, because we're behind the 8 ball if we're not having that conversation first. And I am one of those parents that was behind the 8 ball with some of my older kids. We did not have that conversation before the contact occurred. And your book certainly has helped me to prevent that from happening with my younger kids. I'm really, really grateful for that. I know a lot of parents may think, well, if you introduce this topic to your kids, that's just going to intrigue them and going to make them more curious about it. So they might actually go search it out. But that's not the case, is it?
Well, I'll tell you, you've got 2 choices, right? So you can either cross your fingers and hope that your kid doesn't see porn until the day after you start the conversation. So you can cross your fingers. But let me tell you, that plan hasn't been working.
No.
Because that's a plan that most parents have been using, and it has not been working. So the other plan is a defensive strategy, right? A defensive where you are proactive and you begin those conversations. Yes, kids are curious. Absolutely. But, we don't hesitate to tell kids about other dangers.
Right.
Right? Oh my gosh, if I tell them not to run out into the street because they might get hit by a car, they might just run out. There it is. Yeah. Seeing what it's like. We teach them, don't run out. This could happen. We teach them. No kid deserves to face the porn industry alone. And that's unfortunately what is happening if we don't step up and start these conversations early enough, then it makes a difference. So yes, kids are curious, but so much safer if we get in there and start these conversations to kind of allay their curiosity and talk to them about it and normalize it. And so that, they know they can come and talk to us. Now, can I say that 100% no kid will ever go and look for it? I can't say that. But if they've been warned, they're still ahead of the game. So I just feel like the greater risk is on the side of not saying anything. And you know what? This is the thing. I don't know about dads, but moms we are like, we love to feel guilt. I don't know what it is, but it's like, if I can feel guilty about something and I can wake up at 3 a.m. and, worry about it, I will. So
Oh, for sure.
we're all like, oh, I don't want to cause my child to go looking for it. Then I'll be the one. You're not to blame. You're not to blame that we don't have laws in place that will, make tech companies be more responsible with their product. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. And so you got to do something about it to protect your children. So I would say, don't depend on the cross your fingers plan, depend on a defensive plan. And, I've kind of pulled together like the Defend Young Minds triple defense strategy or plan for parents. And we've talked about some of this already, but the 3 strategies for parents are: get the facts. So educate yourself, arm your kids, give them, the information they need, and then continue the conversation. So, parents need to do that. And it's kind of an iterative, get the fact, keep yourself current. And you can do that by reading the articles on our website and, just keeping those conversations going with your kids. And then, give your kids those 3 defenses of a definition, a warning, and a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, 3 voices, 3 voices of credibility. It's great for them to hear it from their parents, but if they can hear it from another trusted leader, either a church leader or a teacher or a coach or somebody that will talk to them and say, you know what, I highly recommend you stay away from this. And then if they hear it from their peers or older peers, they hear from older peers, to stay away. And if you don't have older peers to talk to them,
Mm-hmm.
then we have a curriculum called Brain Defense.
Yes.
Which will help them, which is taught by 6 wonderful teens that teach your kids about digital safety, healthy tech habits, and, how to reject pornography. So that's my triple plan, strategy for parents, defenses for kids, and then 3 voices of credibility so that your kids are not just hearing it from one place, but they're hearing it from 2 and 3 places, 3 voices. And then it starts to be like, oh, my mom said it, my teacher said it, my older brother said it, whatever, or the brain gang on Brain Defense said it. And then they really start to feel like, yeah, this is credible. This is something I need to believe and protect myself from.
That is so good. Yes. And I love it is a defensive strategy, but what I love about it too, it's also you're going on the offense as well, because you're coming in before, hopefully you're getting the first word, you're making the first play here by, yes, of course, if they encounter it without knowing what an addiction is and without knowing, hey, this is enticing and yet dangerous, they're going to just see it and not realize that what they're viewing, they know that instinctively that they're ashamed of it, but they don't know the danger that's lurking there. You've taken that, when you go on the offense with the books, you've taken that element away. They are informed and empowered to understand that this, though it seems enticing, is not. So let's just, in our remaining moments, I'd love to talk about the nature of addiction, because this helped me so much in reading the book. You talk about the feeling brain versus the thinking brain. And the feeling brain is a really good thing. And you use 2 fists. You've got your 2 fists up. And I did this with my kids. So you've got your feeling brain, and it's a good thing, right? It tells us when we're hungry. It tells us when we're thirsty. It tells us when we're cold or when we're hot. So it tells us needs that we might have that we need to meet for our bodies. But the problem with the feeling brain, it doesn't know right from wrong, is one thing that you explained. It knows we need something, but it doesn't know right from wrong. The thinking brain, however, is the part of the brain that understands what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong. And the analogy you used in the book I thought was so great. You're outside on a hot summer day and an ice cream truck comes across the street. and you want ice cream. So the feeling brain immediately craves the ice cream and it starts running towards the ice cream truck. But the thinking brain, and you say to cover the feeling brain with the thinking brain, says, stop, look both ways before I cross the street. And that is what happens when your thinking brain is in control. It recognizes a danger. But with addiction, the feeling brain becomes more powerful than the thinking brain. And you cover the thinking brain with your feeling brain. So that would cause a young person perhaps to run across a street because all they're thinking about is what they want, the feeling of needing and wanting that ice cream, and they put themselves in a place of danger. I can't tell you how much this helped me in understanding addiction as an adult. I don't think I've ever understood it so clearly before because I have some people I'm very close to in my life who have had addictions to alcohol, to nicotine, to other things, to pornography. And I haven't understood it before, how that can happen, how that can lead a grown person to make really unwise, dangerous choices in their life. And now I seem to understand it more. So talk about the nature of addiction a little bit, because honestly, I was just kind of blown away. And I've been sharing this explanation to people that I've been meeting on this topic. I had some women in a small group that were having some addiction issues. And I'm like, well, and I went into your book and explained it all to them. They were like sitting there going, that's really amazing. I never really understood it. And they'd been suffering from addiction for years, or they were overcoming it. It was a Christian small group. But anyways, I thought that was brilliant. Please unpack that a little bit for us.
Yes. Well, an addiction is when the feeling brain, which is it's a part of the brain that all mammals share. Okay. We all have this very instinctive part of our brain. And it's absolutely necessary for survival. And in the book, I talk about like a cheetah running after a gazelle, like on the hunt, right? The predator going for the prey. It doesn't stop and think, is this morally right that I go and kill this gazelle so I can eat? No, it just goes and does it. It gets it, right? It doesn't think about it. It is going by instinct. But as humans, we have a thinking brain. We have a prefrontal cortex. And that is a big part of what makes us human. And that is where we learn right from wrong. That's where we learn our morals, our ethics, and where we learn from our past experiences and remember them so that we can make better choices in the future. So when an addiction takes hold, it's usually when we are using something, whether it's a drug or an experience, to deal with a negative emotion, right? We feel sad or lonely or bored or whatever. And so the brain sees that as a negative state. The brain wants pleasure. It avoids pain, right? So a negative feeling is painful. And so let's say a kid is being bullied or feeling lonely, left out, whatever. I mean, I remember feeling this way when I was a kid. And, but they have something that's really exciting that can take their mind off of the loneliness for a few moments or a while. And as you do that, you become dependent on the drug or the experience. So pornography, because it arouses the sexual center in the brain, and it can arouse that prematurely.
Right.
So we kind of think, young kids are not going to feel anything. That's not actually true. I've talked with therapists who have been treating 6-year-olds for porn addiction, like full out addiction.
Oh, dear me.
So, you don't want to hang around with me too long, Catherine. I have way too many stories.
Oh, dear.
So that unfortunately, pornography is, like I said before, it's like the number one thing kids can get into that's addicting. And so,
it's the one thing that has more access to them than perhaps alcohol or drugs at a very young age. When they get to be teenagers.
Right.
Yeah.
We protect them from a lot of those kinds of things. But pornography, there was a mom who, her 8-year-old daughter, they told her about sex and then they gave her an internet connected device. They just didn't realize
oh dear
what she could actually get to on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so she looked up sex, and then she got into porn, and then her personality changed. She came home every day, went into her bedroom, looked at that. They finally figured it out. They finally caught her. And thankfully they took her and got her counseling and what have you. But it's a problem with the dopamine system.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is an important neurochemical that helps us be motivated to do something to keep us alive. So if you actually suppress dopamine in rats and put food in their cage, they will not cross the cage to get the food.
Really?
If you take a little bit of food and put it in their mouth, they'll eat it.
Mm-hmm.
And the dopamine is what gets them motivated to actually go and get it. So in an addiction with pornography, what happens is that you need more and more dopamine to get that same high.
Mm-hmm.
And so with drugs, you're going to take more drugs. With alcohol, you're going to get harder and harder. You might start with beer, but then you get harder and harder. With porn, it's novelty and also more extreme pornography. So many parents, especially if you're trying to live a pure life, and you're trying to keep your mind out of the gutter, you don't realize how horrific pornography has become, how violent it has become. Because how do pornographers deliver more and more extreme pornography?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, violence is one way. And so, so addiction is truly a problem with pornography. It's a very effective way to distract your mind from whatever problem. One of the guys that I really admire, his name is John Fort, and he is with a ministry called Be Broken Ministries. And he talks about how he had a porn addiction and how it caused him a lot of problems and acting out problems. And so when he got married and had a son, he really wanted to protect his son from this.
Mm-hmm.
But of course his son found it. I mean, it's going to be there. But he talked to him about kind of this concept of trying to meet your emotional needs before, so that you don't go to porn. And this boy found that when he walked home, he would feel lonely. He didn't have anyone to walk home with. His friends lived in different places. By the time he got home, he just felt lonely. And that is what set him up to be vulnerable to looking at pornography. So instead of the father railing on him, don't look at pornography, let's solve this problem.
Yeah.
What can we do so that you're not feeling lonely? Because they had identified what the problem was.
Mm-hmm.
And so on his way home, he just call his dad or he'd text with him. And he would just have a short conversation with his dad. And when he got home, he didn't feel lonely. He'd had that human connection. And so we talk a lot about this, or I do, about the importance of emotional resilience. And we have a whole guide on our website about teaching kids about emotional resilience so they won't go to an addiction, right? To solve or to deal with their negative emotions. And so
that's important for adults too. That's really helpful across the board. That doesn't end, because we all have those things that we lean on, those crutches that we go to. I think scripture would call that idolatry. And that sounds like this big evil thing. And it is, because we're leaning on that instead of going to good godly sources and going to God himself in order to alleviate that need, because that need can't be met in pornography and liquor and drugs and illicit sex and ways that God didn't design it. So that need is designed to be filled in other ways than the way we're filling it. And so that's so true. That's so heartbreaking, that little boy going home and finding a source, and his dad, to help him counteract that. And I think his reaction to that was just simply beautiful, not condemning him. And that's one thing we have to know as parents. We do not condemn our kids for their interest or the excitement they may feel in this or any kind of an addiction. It's a counterfeit solution that will not help them, that will not heal them, that will not meet their need. It meets a very temporary need that can also become just incredibly destructive. I think the way you've described that is just so beautiful. A couple other things that we don't have time to get into, but I know you have on your website that talks about how porn fuels child-on-child sex abuse. It fuels, like you said, child sex abuse itself in the industry, but then child-on-child sex abuse. I know you have a lot of resources on that. I'd like to end with these tips you have at the back of the book for caregivers and for parents. You talk about 1, you need to become your child's go-to expert. 2, remember that children are not bad if they are intrigued by pornography. It's designed to intrigue them. So that would be a natural response.
Yeah, porn is the enemy, not your kid.
Right. Exactly. Thank you. We do not battle against flesh and blood, but against the spirits behind them. 3, teach your child how to forget bad pictures. And you have some wonderful guidelines in the book that help them to redirect them to get them the bad pictures out of their mind where they're fading and they're not prominent.
Yep.
4, begin explaining sex earlier rather than later. I love that. We picked up a couple of books. I don't know if you're familiar with these. They're by Jim Burns. God Made Your Body. They're for ages 3 to 5. And then How God Makes Babies. And there's a lot of good sources out there where you can, it's hard for parents. What are all the bases I need to cover? These 2 books have been good, and we've read them a few times with our kids. They really, really enjoy those. So finding a source to help you have those conversations, because you do need to have those conversations much younger than we thought. The first, the one for 3 to 5-year-olds doesn't go into sex. It just goes into design and anatomy a little bit. And then the 6 to 9-year-old. And if your kids are going to school outside of your home, even in home, we homeschool, you still need to do it.
Yeah. No, this family that got me started writing the book was the homeschooling family.
Right. And
I have had homeschoolers say, well, we totally protect our kids. So I'm like, well, do you have the internet? Oh, so, we were talking about starting with their mind, and that is the internal filter, right?
Right.
You can have filters on devices. You can have filters on our routers. Those are all really good. We can have parental controls, and I totally recommend getting on top of that. It's our responsibility. It's our stewardship to do that. But to build an internal filter in your child's mind from a young age, so that when they get exposed, they totally like, oh, I know what this is.
Right.
One 9-year-old kid, his mom read him good pictures, bad pictures. He went to school the next day, actually like 3 days later. And on the playground, there was his friend with the phone and showed him pornography. And he knew what it was. He knew what to do. He went home and he told his mom, and he said, I was scared, but I knew what to do.
Yep.
And can you just feel the burden coming off of that little child? I was scared, but I knew what to do. So we can do this for our kids. We can help shoulder that burden, and we can be their go-to safe person to talk to about something that is so troubling to children when they have to face it alone.
Oh, that is so good. Fortify the internal filter. That's the part we're missing. And I think in particular, I run in homeschool circles, have for so long. You are extremely naive, mom and dad, even if you're homeschooling, if you think that this doesn't get through all the filters into your home through the internet, and the kids that they're in youth group with, or, we had our kids only in circles that were Christian circles. It still gets through those kind of filters. So we need to fortify the internal filter so they know what to do. The 2 other guidelines you have here. Number 5, teach kids never to take or share pictures of themselves without their clothes on. Teach them to do that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We actually are going to do an episode coming up. I'm so excited. We're going to tackle the tech, because I think that is the elephant in the room. I'm a Gen Xer. The technology that our kids are facing right now, it's just mind-boggling for parents. So we're going to do a whole episode tackling the tech, but make sure they know not to do that. And 6, continue to mentor your child with regular conversations, checking in with them, saying, how's it going? Have you encountered anything?
When was the last time you saw pornography?
Exactly.
Just, and I want you to tell me about it.
Right.
Especially as young children that, I think once they're in high school, you should have regular discussions with them.
Yeah.
But at some point, they have got to make this decision.
Right.
to protect their own brain and their own mind, and they need good arguments against it. They need solid reasons. So let's start building that internal filter from the time they're young, from the time they have any access to the internet is when we need to start building that filter.
Yes, yes. Kristen, I cannot thank you enough for educating us on how to discuss the threat of pornography with our kids. I know I am so much better equipped. I was laughing earlier. It's kind of funny. My 7-year-old was in the kitchen with my 14-year-old yesterday. And she's like, have you heard of pornography? I think she mispronounced it a little bit, and my 14-year-old was like, I don't want to have this discussion with you. Go talk to mom. and I'm like, okay, now we need to have the conversation. Let's not go around youth group or to your cousins and everybody talking about pornography. Where she goes.
Yeah. And you can tell kids like, this is just a conversation that we're having together. But this isn't for you to, but kids do talk. But one thing that's totally free that parents can get from our website is a quick start guide, how to talk to kids about pornography. And it gives you some basic facts and some how to start these conversations, some great ideas for just getting those things going and some resources. So go to defendyoungminds.com and download our free guide, how to talk to kids about pornography.
And good pictures, bad pictures, you can get wherever books are sold, I'm guessing, right?
You can get them at Amazon. Yes, mostly we sell through Amazon, but they are in Christian bookstores. And if you want to buy it from a Christian bookstore and they don't have it, send them our way. We sell to several bookstores. And even though, I will say good pictures, bad pictures is faith neutral. We expect that parents can teach whatever your faith is. You can teach your children your faith and overlay it.
Right.
Parents really have a hard time is just getting these conversations about pornography started. So that's where we come in and help.
Amen. That you have supplied such a huge need for parents. I cannot thank you enough. And be sure to tune in next week when Kristen and I are going to tackle the elephant in the room, the tech. I know how ignorant many of us feel and unprepared when it comes to the technology that our kids are bathed in, they're fluent in. We are not. This contributes greatly to the ever widening generation gap because much of that gap resides in this area of technology. So next week, we're going to discuss how to tackle that elephant, all the threats posed by the technology in our kids' lives. And we're going to cover that ground so we will be better prepared to keep our kids safe. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the show, Kristen has kindly offered to give a set of her books away to one very lucky listener. To be eligible for this giveaway, you do need to be a subscriber at my website. So just open up my email that promotes this episode on how to protect your kids from pornography, or pornography as my 7-year-old likes to say. By the way, I usually send out my new podcast emails the day after the episode first airs. That way I can put a live link into that email. So if you are one of those awesome first day listeners, check your email tomorrow. Okay. But just open up that email, send me a response saying that you want to be entered into the giveaway, and I will put you in. Now, if you aren't a subscriber yet, never fear. It is not too late. Just go to KatherineSeegers.com and subscribe, and you will get an introductory email. Send me a response to that introductory email saying that you want to be entered into the giveaway for Kristen's book, and I will put your name in the drawing. Since Kristen is helping us tackle the tech in the next episode, I'm going to collect names via email up until Thursday, June 27th, and then I will draw a winner on Friday, June 28th. And be sure to tune in next week when we tackle that tech. You don't want to miss it. I want to thank you for joining me today. Look, I know there are a lot of things you could be listening to right now, and I really appreciate that you took this time to spend with me. I hope you will join me for my next podcast when we take aim at some aspect of our culture that threatens to derail our parenting and steal our kids' faith. If you enjoyed this episode of Christian Parent Crazy World, would you consider telling a friend and sharing it on social media and giving it a good review over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and following me on Facebook and Instagram? Oh, and maybe you could say that Christian Parent Crazy World is the best podcast you've ever heard. And you're entire life. Just a thought. And be sure to check out my website, which is KatherineSeegers.com. That's Catherine with a C. I have lots of articles and resources there that will help you on your parenting journey. And if you subscribe, I will be sure to send you some really cool free stuff and notify you of future podcasts, articles, and blogs. I want to end this and every episode with a word of encouragement. God gave you your kids, your specific kids, for a reason. That's because you hold the key to unlocking who God created them to be. We'll see you next time.
Christian Parent Crazy World is a production of Life Audio and Salem Media. If you liked what you heard today, please take a second to rate and review this podcast in your favorite podcast app so that more listeners like you can find the show. For more faith-filled, inspirational podcasts, visit us at lifeaudio.com.